Da, da, na, 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 na. Thomas in New York. I hope everything's going well for you guys. Today we are in Kensington Cemetery, Valhalla, New York. It is, coincidentally, as the filming of this video, well, day opening game, if that makes sense. big, big New York Yankee fan, and it's only fitting that we visit one of the greats in Yankee history. I hope all is well. Thomas in New York. Let's talk. Now, if you're a big sports fan, this video is done in collaboration with the Thomas Sports Show. Check it out on YouTube. How about this for a resume? Built Yankee Stadium, acquired Babe Ruth, and won the first of the franchise's World Series titles. Just that in itself is enough to be inducted into Baseball Hall of Fame. We're talking about Jacob Ruppert, the greatest sports dynasty in American history. Began with a second division team in what many argue is the country's premier city. Now, Jacob Ruppert, he changed all of that. We're going to fast forward to 1915 when he purchased the New York Yankees. And some might argue evil empire, yada, yada, yada. Baseball has never been the same since that purchase in 1915. Here's a quote from a paper about Jacob Ruppert, who's actually quite, done quite the many of things in, New York City history, but that's a little later we could touch on that. Let's just mostly focus on his baseball career. Quote, for $450,000, we got an orphan ball club, said Jacob Ruppert at the time, who purchased the team with a man, and check this tongue twister out, his name was Tillinghast Houston. Houston, yes, yes, I will repeat that name again. Tillinghast Houston. Here is Jacob Ruppert. The club was without a home of its own, without players of outstanding ability, without prestige. And within a decade, Ruppert had built Yankee Stadium. He had acquired an individual, you might have heard of him, by the name of Babe Ruth, and won the first of the franchise's World Series title. Backtrack here a little bit about Jacob. Born in 1867, New York City. He was the son of Jacob Ruppert Sr., who owned the Ruppert Brewery. Beer. And at the age of 19, Ruppert began to work at the brewery, and by age 31, he was elected to the first of 4 terms as a United States congressman, and that was New York's 15th district. He chose not to run again in 1906, instead becoming a colonel in the 7th Regiment of the National Guard. Now, Jacob, he had inherited the brewery upon his father's death in 1915. That same year, Frank Farrell and William DeVere, the original owners of the American League's entry in New York City, decided to sell the club to Ruppert and Houston. Now, after the Yankees, they had finished no better than fourth in Ruppert's first 3 years as owner, Ruppert hired a manager by the name of Miller Huggins on the advice of the American League president, Van Johnson. 2 years later, Ruppert bought Babe Ruth from the Boston Red Sox, the American League's best team of the second decade of the 20th century, for a record $125,000. And that, buying Babe Ruth from the Boston Red Sox by Mr. Ruppert, quite frankly, could have changed. It did change the fortunes, the luck, everything about the New York Yankees completely upside down for the better. In that year, he had 54 home runs, and the Yankees won a team record 95 games that year, and they drew almost 1.3 million fans to the Polo Grounds, more than doubling their previous attendance record mark. During the next 3 seasons, the Bronx Bombers, they would win 3 AL pennants and a World Series title, capping off 1923, the year that Ruppert opened Yankee Stadium, and he would buy the club outright from Houston by winning the franchise's first fall classic. Now, Ruppert, he would guide the Yankees to 7 more AL flags and 6 more World Series title. Wow. Before his death in 1939. That's, he owned the team up until his death. He was 71 years old, and he lay dying in Lenox Hill Hospital. Babe Ruth said, and Babe Ruth, rather, at that point, he was already retired as a player and soon to be enshrined Hall of Famer. He visited him at his bedside as we approached the final resting spot of Mr. Ruppert. And, and he said, Babe Ruth said when he visited Jacob Ruppert, he said that was the only time in his life that he had ever called him Babe to his face. And Babe Ruth did have his salary disputes with Ruppert over the years, and it drew a lot of, press coverage. And he said, I couldn't help crying when I went out. Ruppert had an eye, Jacob Ruppert. He had an eye, for acquiring a lot of good baseball players, a lot of good Hall of Famers during his tenure. Frank Baker, Bill Dickey, Joe DiMaggio, Lou Gehrig, Lefty Gomez, Joe Gordon, Herb Pencock, Babe Ruth, just to name a few names. April of 1940, the Yankees had decided to dedicate a plaque in Ruppert's memory and that's actually, it now rests in Monument Park in Yankee Stadium. It says, "Gentlemen, American sportsmen, through whose vision and courage destined to become the home of champions, was erected and dedicated to the American game of baseball." Ruppert, he was elected into the Baseball Hall of the Hall of Fame rather in 2013. Now, quite just he was known as being quite the bachelor was Jacob Ruppert. And well, Jacob, he was survived by his brother and his sister Amanda. And what you seen, the mausoleum, that was a family mausoleum. So when you look at Ruppert's father, Jacob Sr., left behind an estate of 6 million, 382 back in his time, which was 1915 when he died. And Ruppert, his son, increased it to 120 million by the time he died, which is a whole lot more now valued. And that money was managed by Jacob's heirs when he passed away. His brother George, who served as the Yankees vice president, he declined to take over the team presidency and insisted that the general manager, Ed Barrow, be given control of the club. Under Ed Barrow's leadership, the Yankees won a fourth consecutive World Series in 1939 and captured three more AL titles and won 2 World Series from 1941 and 1943, as the nation had entered at that point World War II. After mismanaging Ruppert's brewery, the heirs sold the Yankees to Dan Toppling, Del Webb, and Larry McPhail in 1945. The brewery sold its flagship beer, Knickerbocker beer, to Rheingold and went out of business in 1965. Kind of sad ending, and everything after a while just withers away and goes away. There was a tall tale or a rumor going around that Ruppert is responsible for the Yankees' famous pinstripe uniforms. Now, according to this account, Ruppert chose the pinstripes to make what they wanted to make the franchise player, Babe Ruth, look less obese. But, then there's a contradiction that the uniform actually was introduced in 1912. That's before Ruppert became the owner of the Yankees. So there is that little rumor that's always been floating around. Also buried here, too, is Lou Gehrig, which I did a video on. Buried nearby as well in a different cemetery, also buried, was Babe Ruth and Billy Martin. So I have videos up there as well. Big time Yankee fan. Let's go Yankees. This is Thomas in New York. I must skedaddle. I bid you adieu.